Can one day a week of meaningful work transform your perspective on your job? Also, what is meaningful work anyways? My name's Alex Lobert. I'm a former tech marketer turned podcast host who thinks a lot about career satisfaction. And I want to try to answer these questions. So what is meaningful work? I've been asked this a few times since starting this whole podcast journey. And I think it really boils down to four things. And it's four things that I take from a little bit of Daniel Pink and a little bit of the Harvard survey on adult development. Those seem to be like the two things that really resonate with me in this department. Now, I've read a lot of books on this topic, and I think they all circle something similar to what I'm about to say. So I don't want it to sound like those are the only two sources, but at the same time, I think those map pretty well to this. So the four things that I believe, and I think research supports, are really important to meaningful work and job satisfaction are: 1, purpose; 2, relationships; 3, autonomy; and the last one being mastery. All right, let's dive into those a little bit. Now, purpose, this one's really subjective. The question here is, do you think that the work you're doing is actually making a measurable difference in people's lives? Does it matter? If you don't think so, it's really hard for people to feel like their work is meaningful. But people who do find purpose in their work, even jobs that might not sound like they have a lot of purpose on the surface, can actually find their job to be very meaningful and very fulfilling. One case study that I always love is the study about janitors in hospitals. Those that actually think their job is to improve the well-being of the patients and by helping the hospital to actually be cleaner and safer, they think their job is great. They're actually more engaged. It's those janitors that actually think their job is just to mop the floors. Those are the ones who are kind of most disengaged with their job. There's a meaningful difference in just the perception in how much engaged they are with their job based alone by their perception and their framing of the purpose. So the first one is like, are you doing something you think actually matters? Now, the second piece is relationships. This one I steal from the Harvard study of adult development. What it showed was one of the strongest predictors of satisfaction with your life is the strength of your relationships. Now, I think it's then no surprise that a thing that we do 8, maybe more hours a day in work, if it does not have meaningful relationships, then it is likely to not be engaging. So I think that same principle, we are the same people, whether we're at work or we're not at work. And that means we are social and we need to have strong relationships. So really being connected to your coworkers, liking your boss, liking the people you work with is very powerful in terms of driving engagement. The other piece of research that I think is really interesting is Gallup actually does a survey on satisfaction in the workplace. And they find that having a best friend at work is a really strong predictor of whether someone will be engaged or not. Autonomy. So this one is maybe kind of obvious, but if you have a say in how you do your work, where you do your work, when you do your work, you're going to be a lot more engaged than if you don't. Many of us have had micromanaging bosses or workplaces, and I can tell you firsthand, it's not a lot of fun. It's very easy to get disengaged if you don't feel like you have a meaningful say over how your work is done or how the finished product gets accomplished. So having autonomy, being able to choose what you do, being able to, go pick up your daughter from work, being able to go exercise in the middle of the day, being able to have a longer lunch, if needed. Those are really powerful, pieces of autonomy that actually drive workforce satisfaction or workplace satisfaction. The last one is mastery. And mastery is interesting. We're just kind of wired as people to want to get better at stuff. It's the reason that video games have levels that progress in increasing difficulty. Video game designers know this principle too, and they use it to their advantage when designing fun games. But workplaces and your job is the same way. You want to get better. You want to be able to create a more impressive video the next day. You want to be able to close a bigger deal. You want to feel like you're getting better at marketing or copywriting or whatever. Software engineering, you want to feel like you're getting better and you're making progress towards something and that you are improving your skills. Now, I want to have a quick sidebar that I do think also strengths are really important here. I think there are probably some natural things that we are better at. I think it kind of falls under the mastery angle. If you're working on skills that you both enjoy and that you're kind of good at, you're likely to continue to improve your skills in a faster rate. Also, it's just the things you want to be known for. I always loved the definition of a strength, not only as something that you are good at, but also something you want to be known for, something you enjoy to do. It's not just about being good at it. I'm good at a lot of stuff that I don't enjoy. I don't think that actually means it's a strength. Okay. So purpose, relationships, autonomy, and mastery. I think those are the 4 critical buckets. I'm not saying they're probably everything you need. They're not the only things that have any effect on whether you are doing meaningful work, but I think those are probably 4 of the most important, in my opinion. Now, the other thing I think is really interesting is, does all of your job need to be filled to the max with each of those dimensions? Do you need to be seeing purpose and having strong relationships with everybody, autonomy in every single way? Probably not. There's actually a research study done by the Mayo Clinic and their doctors that found that just by having 1 day of meaningful work, doctors actually were much less likely to suffer from burnout. And actually above 20%, there was diminishing returns. So that's when it started to level off. The marginal benefit was lower. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of a proponent of push this to the extreme. If you can get to 100%, amazing. I know that's probably not realistic though, in a lot of places. And there's a lot of solace I think that can be taken in the fact that just 1 day of meaningful work actually can really transform your perception of your job, protect you at least from some of those worst outcomes like burnout. So your target, 1 day of meaningful work. Now, how do you get there? And I have a couple thoughts on, actually improving your job such that you can get to 20% of your time being done in meaningful work. The first one's really just doing an energy audit. You've got to understand how much of your day are you actually doing meaningful work. These are the projects and tasks which I enjoy, which I am seeing purpose, which I am having great relationships, which I am achieving mastery. And these are the ones where I am not. Once you have that information, you can actually start to figure out what are the things you want to do less of and what are the things you want to do more of. So that's the power of this. The first thing is just awareness. And actually, I suggest writing it down, maybe journaling. I journal every morning. These are the type of ways that you can do this. Create a spreadsheet. There are ways to kind of say, these are the tasks that you enjoy. These are the ones you don't. The second piece of this is job crafting. And job crafting, maybe a little sounds easier than it is, but it's kind of simple in concept. Volunteer for more of the things that you find give you energy, gives you those sources of purpose, relationship, autonomy, and meaning. Try to not do the things that don't energize you. I've been a manager at companies before. Often people have a little more latitude maybe than they think, but either way, maybe at the end of a big project, try to raise your hand for the stuff that energizes you. Try to say, oh, I see that. I love doing the creative stuff. I see how that impacts what we're doing. Creating that ad campaign or making that, updates to our website. Okay, volunteer, right? And try to start to fill your time and shift it towards the stuff that you enjoy. The third thing is around relationships. Try to go make some friends at work. That's really hard. I understand sometimes, especially if you're not feeling into it right now. But at the same time, scheduling coffees with some of your colleagues, going out to lunch with people, trying to hang out a little bit, join the community Slack chat that maybe is fun stuff as opposed to just work stuff. These are actually ways to, again, build relationships at work. I've been guilty at times of feeling checked out and probably not investing in the relationships I had with my colleagues. And it's detrimental. Honestly, I think that it doesn't actually help much of anything. Might kind of feel good in the moment, but in reality, it's not actually getting you towards feeling job satisfaction for the most part. So just kind of dive in. try to just go make relationships. Again, I think coffee is great. I love coffee, but there's a lot of ways that you can go like meet coworkers and try to build relationships. And then the last one is really with regard to purpose. If you can't change your job, if that's not where you're at right now, then trying to reframe it. Be those janitors in hospitals. Figure out what is the connecting thread between what you do and a change that's happening in the world. Whether you're in the finance department, marketing, sales, there is a way that what you're doing is impacting some customer down the road. Now, if you can't find that, one, I'd say maybe talk to your manager, talk to leaders in your in the business, in your organization. But if you really can't, then maybe it is time to go. Maybe you do need to try to exit and find a place where you can find that purpose, find meaningful relationships, have that autonomy, and have that mastery. I actually linked to an article that I wrote below. There you can find, I have a little bit of a checklist for potentially some questions to ask in an interview and when you're talking to companies to try to actually suss out whether that is a place where you'll get those 4 critical dimensions of meaningful work. So this is what I think drives meaningful work. It's those 4 dimensions: purpose, relationships, autonomy, and mastery, and at least 20% of your week. Those are the critical things. I really do think this is important. I think that by doing this, you don't just transform your work life, you probably transform your personal life too. All right. This has been so much fun. I love this topic. Feel free to drop me a comment or send me a message if you want to ask me some questions about what makes meaningful work. Give the show a follow, please. Really looking forward to having more interviews with people about the best job they've ever had. That's always a lot of fun and hopefully can exemplify some of these factors that we discussed today. Anyways, have a great time. Peace out. Talk to you later.